Hey guys, and welcome back to another weekly horoscope. You can see I'm back in my studio here in Berlin, Germany. So today we're going to be looking at the astrology for November 2nd to the 8th of 2021. My name is David. I am your astrologer from HC Astrology. Thanks for being here. Thanks for all your support, sharing, liking, commenting, and subscribing. It all means a lot, and it goes a super long way. So I'm going to be trying to do something a little bit different this week. I'm going to be focusing more on the major transits, but still I'm going to keep looking at the moon. But rather than because often I find when I'm doing lunar transits, I'm really breaking those down a lot too. And I'm still going to break them down, but maybe in a more intuitive or casual manner. So we'll just see how that goes. Otherwise, if you're looking to book a consultation with me before the year is up, I'd suggest doing that now before I get too busy. And to go over to my website, go to the services page, book through my scheduler system. I'm also going to be offering a special holiday sale starting this month where you can book a full chart reading, but for the cost of a basic reading. Basically, just go to my site and book a basic reading and let me know that you're interested in that special sale. I'm going to be making a post about that, about how to exactly do that. But if you want to do it now and get ahead of the curve, just do that and let me know in the message when you're filling out the form that you want that special deal. And you're going to save €50 and get a 30-minute extra on your consultation. Plus, if you've been expecting the monthly astrology through Perry's newsletter this month, that's going to be on hiatus for the next few months. And that's just because Perry's doing a whole makeover for the newsletter. And so you can expect that to come back in the new year and with just way more happening, way more excitement in that particular project. But until then, I'm going to be setting up my Patreon account soon. And through that, you'll be able to sign up for different tiers, first of all, to support my channel, but you're going to get special benefits through it as well. And some of those tiers, maybe the higher ones, you'll get that monthly horoscope again, or the forecast, depending on which tier you're paying for. More information on that to come once I release it. So anyways, for now, let's just get into the astrology. So as you can see, finally, I'm back in my studio so I can do the annotations again, which I'm really excited about. So let's just bring those up. So as usual, you can see I'm usually reading from Berlin, Germany. It really doesn't matter where you're watching the astrology from. Just adjust it to your time, and all the astrology is going to be the same. Maybe it'll be at a different time, but for the most part, I'm looking at the background noise, and some of this is applicable to you personally. Some of it's applicable to a mundane transit. That's what it's about. It's more like a weather forecast, so to speak. Anyway, so looking at the astrology, I didn't include it here, but I'm going to talk a little bit about the Mercury-Jupiter trine, which happens today on Monday, November 1st, which is when I'm doing the forecast from. But yeah, I'm going to look at that quickly before jumping in everything. But then otherwise, some of the big things happening, we got that Mercury-Pluto square on November 2nd. And then what else? We got the Scorpio New Moon happening on, what is that, Thursday on November 4th. And then there's going to be, that includes all that opposition, the sun's opposition to Uranus. That's really flavoring the new moon. And then Venus is going to ingress into Capricorn, which I'm going to kind of break down quite a bit just because that is significant in the terms of that Venus is going to be in Capricorn for 5 months while it retrogrades there. So that's really important. And then at the end of the week, we get that. This is going to be really nice, I think, on the 6th, the Saturday, with Venus and Mercury sextiling. And then basically the end of the week is getting more into those new Capricorn and Scorpio vibes when the moon enters into Capricorn. Okay, so let's start from the top and break everything down. Like I said, just kind of looking at what happened on Monday, the day before, Mercury made the trine to Jupiter. So So really this just kind of gives a taste for what the week is going to be about. There's big news, there's big, bold announcements, maybe optimistic messages of different kinds that are big, exchanges that are about prosperity or growth or optimism or related in some level to this bigger picture. And this is kind of like something that's kind of flavoring the week, is this negotiation with where we're at emotionally or where we're at personally versus like a bigger picture of things, and how there's going to be this contrast between, having to take that seriousness more seriously and more in depthly, but then at the same time, having to do things in terms of something bigger than ourselves. So on some level, we're going to be connecting to that. And maybe through this transit, from Sunday into Monday, there may have been coming together on some level with partnership and similar beliefs and attitudes, worldviews, philosophies, things that have to do with people, sociability, topics related to how people socialize in the world too. So I see this as a kind of a nice transit and time that kind of flavors the start of the week, which I think is going to help, considering some of the maybe more radical transits happening elsewhere later in the week and further into November. So I would try to suggest, whatever positive outcomes come from that exchange, to try and recall that connection, because it's going to be more grounded in what has been the major supportive connection through the last couple months, since this is the third time Mercury makes that trine to Jupiter too in the synodic cycle. So, now that they've connected again for the third time, that conversation's matured more. We know how to converse and navigate through maybe precarious topics. We can connect now and be more truthful, honest, and authentic. And now that we've gone over these topics individually and also outside of maybe a relationship of some kind, we can come back into those experiences and connect in stronger and more unified manners. So yeah, I just wanted to go over that because it's a nice way that the week opens. But anyway, so the moon moves into Libra, and we get that energy shift. So it moved out of Virgo, where we're figuring things out, dealing with details, preparing for when we have less time to deal with those figures, and into Libra for the first time since all these planets, the sun and Mars, and soon Mercury, which has just stationed direct, all those planets have moved out of Libra. Mercury's direct, which means we can now feel the changes that have happened in this part of life. There's some fresh air again. It's a bit less stagnant with less planets in there. Things have been worked out. Balance and fairness have been worked out on some level. And we have made a judgment call of some kind. And regardless of if this felt easy or not, balance has been restored on some level. Maybe it's not exactly the balance we were looking for, but balance has been restored. So regardless of it, of whether or not we liked it or not, we can go back to maintaining a sense of image or even projected integrity on some level. So this is us feeling and integrating that new landscape of Libra after the changes of the last month. And I think it's worth thinking about Libra in terms of like this idea of like reaping what you sow. So with that in mind, Libra is this kind of sign. It also has to do with Venus and keeping fairness, but it's also the exaltation of Saturn. So there's something about like, did we do the work? Because there's going to be, consequences to that. And so this is reaping what you sow vibe to Libra on some level. And like, did you maintain the balance? Or did you go off the scales? And now that the moon is in Libra, you're going to know whether or not your ability to walk that tightrope has been successful or not. So moving forward, Mercury perfects the square to Pluto, right? So now we got that square to Pluto. And this is the third square to Pluto in this synodic cycle for Mercury, after striking with Pluto once in late September, then again in early October while retrograde. And now, once more, having come to a conclusion maybe in our thinking, questions or exchanges related to this Libra part of life. Now it's connecting in this square again with Pluto. So I think this is significant, and I think it's significant because this is like the point where Mercury stationed retrograde back in late September. So past this point, Mercury will be moving out of shadow, which means that what we've had needed to contemplate, rethink, re-examine has been dealt with on some level. We are ready to move on in terms of our thinking communications related to whatever that process of going over again in Libra we've had to do. And Mercury's gone through this like kind of stellar journey this last month, making its cyclical cazimi with the sun while also conjunct with Mars. It met with Mars that second time too, to take actions and words exchanges to be decisive during a precarious time, as Mars was not in its best condition and neither was the sun. And, so there was a lot of learning that went on. And now that Mercury is alone in Libra, aside, of course, from the moon, there's this space to think, to be more clear with our thoughts. The moon has to do also with our minds and how our minds change and how our minds are influenced by our environments and the things that we're experiencing that happen to us. So there's something about our thoughts being more clear now. And now we can kind of deal with whatever Pluto has been representing, something that has to do with fear, or like we're decoding something cryptic to establish our position, maybe in an argument or an exchange that is about bringing something up from somewhere unseen, right? And to maybe make more visible through our exchanges that which had been hiding before. And, now we're going to take some action on our experiences, knowledge, this clarity of thought. We're capable of communicating maybe more directly with whatever we've been afraid of dealing with. This is that kind of cathartic, transformative release of pent-up energies through our words, through our ideas, through our exchanges in general. So what is being revealed directly now, and what has been intense maybe in the last weeks that needs to be communicated more clearly? Has there been something from the depths that needed to be dealt with while maintaining balance, that now we have the substance in our lives to be more discerning and to deal with this unknown elements with skill and fluidity? Something that maybe was kind of scary for a bit, something that we had to kind of keep the balance with, is now something maybe we know how to deal with more directly. We can communicate with harmony and balance. We can keep a compassionate distance. We do not have to necessarily fear our feelings. We know what needs to be done in order to move on. So I think otherwise, expect revelations as well in technologies and in the news. Like, I think it's like what comes to mind too is like Facebook just announced that it's no longer be Facebook, but it's going to be this company Meta, where all these, where it's kind of this umbrella company to all its companies below it. And, that's kind of a very like Mercury connection with Pluto, so to speak. There's something very like that's been planned for a while, a long time probably. And now it's being like released. Of course, I think it's also related to Jupiter, the connection to Jupiter, but, these are things that bring up a lot of uncertainty. And I think Pluto in many ways represents that uncertainty. So this could involve some challenges, not particularly that Facebook story, but just about like this connection to Pluto, especially in terms of maybe our principles and the decisions we need to make in relation to our principles. Are we aligned with our integrity? It's a challenge to live up sometimes to our own standards, especially not to mention the standards of others, which is why it helps to find maybe balance through principles external to ourselves. And this could be us understanding that in order to deal with a challenge we've been afraid of maybe dealing with, we just need to align to our principles, show up, go through the actions, and then just kind of let go of the results. So like something has needed this retrograde process to understand this Plutonic dilemma. Remember, Mercury went retrograde while square Pluto. So really this connection to Pluto is what that retrogradation was really about. It's like something we had to figure out through that retrogradation in order to come back to Pluto to deal with it in a more well-balanced and from that compassionate distance sort of methodology. So it is deep, it's complex, it's enigmatic, it feels generally maybe on some levels dangerous, or it gives us some fear. But because we've gone through this experiences the last month, we've taken the time to contemplate, to understand that balance and discernment are skills that take time and patience to develop. And we've given ourselves this time to do that. So now it's just about making that last exchange before, saying goodbye. So yeah, moving on, then the moon is going to trine with Saturn. Saturn's direct now. The Libra story is just about finished, once the moon and Mercury leave Libra. And we're taking what we've learned in Libra to apply it to what is about to take place in Scorpio. Saturn is showing support now to what has occurred in Libra. Again, have we maintained that balance or have we not? Saturn is a planet that's all about showing reward after hard work is done. And now that Saturn is direct, there's more ability on Saturn's part to be a fair judge, to look at the bigger picture, Aquarius, and to see how little things we've done to be discerning, Libra, have worked out. Saturn is going to bestow a solid basis for us to feel like what we've done here is enough. And as we move forward into a more extreme Scorpio season, we can feel that if we did the work and we didn't buy into stories our brains were telling us about what was going on outside of face value, then we'll be able to deliver results. We can use what we've learned and apply it to a more vigilant season to compare with a balanced body-mind. See where we've been wrong, maybe on some levels, turn it over and just let go of the results, as I've said before. So like Scorpio season is going to be a time to let go, to purge and relieve ourselves of many unnecessaries. So this transit to Saturn is like reminding us that maintaining the peace is worth it, so that we have a solid basis in our social part of life to focus on what needs eliminating in order to produce a more healthy field for life to occur in the future, which is really what Scorpio season is about. Okay, and that's kind of it for Tuesday. So let's just move into Wednesday. Moon continues through Libra. First, it's going to make that trine to Jupiter. And it's basically just a lunar day in general. But this time, like the moon's in Libra and it's on a different page. So moon trines to Jupiter, order's restored, things come together in unity. This is a feeling that the conversations had on Sunday, Monday are really helping, giving us a sense of security and meeting our needs for social support and balance. Jupiter is also finally direct, which means that the process of coming back to Aquarius to help, support, and create cohesion and order has been determined on how to move forward. Jupiter is offering support moving forward too. Since the next weeks, there's going to be more troubles for planets connecting with Saturn and Uranus from Scorpio. Jupiter is here to show that there is something happening greater than ourselves. There's a process, there is support if we're able to see that and offer affirmation to ourselves and to others. There's a bigger picture going on. Yeah. Jupiter wants to show us that the precarious tightrope we walked the last months during that very long Libra season was worth it. Jupiter is revealing a deeper truth in how that maintained balance works in a bigger picture. And through that, we can get, a sense of trust and hope about how things are going to move forward. We can deepen on that through the coming days of extremes. Now, this is going to be challenging because, the sign Scorpio, which is Mars ruled, is not Libra, Venus ruled. And so all that work we've been doing to maintain balance, it's going to feel like we don't necessarily want to do that anymore. And so it's going to be challenging to remember that, to recall that while there's this feeling of vigilance or vulnerability going on in Scorpio season, where we're just like trying to purge things. Anyway, so Moon then squares with Pluto. And it's kind of like what was revealed through the last squares from Pluto, from the Sun, from Mars, from Mercury. Again, the Moon is for the first time in Libra after the Mercury retrograde and the Mars Cazimi. So now there's this understanding, integration, and chance to reflect on what we may not have had concerning that Libra area of life that we may, need, that we've needed in the last weeks and that we've needed to go through in the last weeks. And Pluto is revealing something that's been powerful and deep, perhaps something we've been afraid to confront or deal with because it hasn't exactly been the time to deal with it yet. Perhaps this is us coming face to face with what was exchanged during the Mercury square on Tuesday. The moon, represents the body. It represents our bodies. And this is us maybe facing the challenge to purify a situation, to turn it over, to clear the air. purge what was left unsaid or unrepresented, because the moon is like is presenting or representing. So to change the circumstance before the closing of this lunar cycle, which if we're not prepared to do now, we may not have the capacity to do it later. And then moon joins with Mercury, and they're going to come together with that process of exchange. This is the first time Mercury has been, this is the first time the moon's joined with Mercury in Libra the last couple months since Mercury's been direct. And now we're taking in what we've learned, what we've gone over, seeing how that works, what keeping the balance is all about in terms of our communications, exchanges, questions, and ways of contesting topics, arguments. This is seeing that perhaps we do not have to be right in order to be in the right. This is seeing that relationships are worth preserving. And sometimes that means admitting where you're wrong, saying sorry where sorry is due, and turning it over to be accepted or rejected. This is about understanding how to maintain integrity. And it doesn't necessarily mean we have to get what we want. It just means that balance is maintained. And then before Moon leaves Libra, it sextiles with the Lord of Libra, Venus, who is also preparing to leave Sagittarius, where the fun has been had and adventures and hope has returned to relationships. The moon has picked up on what's been left over in Libra, and now connecting with the ruler of Libra is seeing how that works best in terms of creating hope and redemption, perhaps especially for those that struggled the most during the Libra escapade. Venus is showing how there is a place for being a bit reckless, for being a bit more carefree, but in that we have to remember that we can come back to wisdom, that we can have fun out there in the world and not have to get bogged down when we are feeling not at our best. And so the moon is like sensing how this has not been an easy road. We're feeling that we're feeling what we need to feel now. And when connecting with Venus, we can find that place to, reharmonize, to create balance again, to have fun, to be in love, to come back to where we are individually, but also in like committed and strong relationships that are willing to let go when wrong, to admit that love is worth more than being right. Again, these are the themes being reminded to us. These are being reiterated. And to have trust, and that if we're vulnerable, that vulnerability creates greater connection and strength, since we're going to need that. And remember, moving into Scorpio season, remember that before things move forward, there's going to be more, we're moving into a more tricky territories is what I mean. And likewise, the moon is also entering its balsamic phase. So there's a sense of understanding in terms of what has occurred during this lunar cycle, what needs to be let go of that could not be complete. The veil is thinner now, so we can sense that there's something more going on here, that there's more to what's happening beyond us. And connecting to Venus, we are seeing that this has to do with relationship, with love, with bonding, with coming together rather than going apart, and how that is done. We're about to come into a new lunar phase 2. So we are seeing what we want to put that energy into, and we're going to want to let go of during this past lunar phase. We can't do everything beyond ourselves, really, is what I think it's connecting with. And because they're both at the later stages of the sign, they're going to be in the bounds of a malefic. So there's something about like how we have to kind of work with what we have and focus on what, brings us the most pleasure, brings us the most sense of temperament before things get more tricky, and find a balance there, have a stability there, have a harmony there, because that's something not going to have the energy to work on later. That's something we're going to want to have secure so that we can deal with other things in our lives coming up during Scorpio season. Okay, that's it for Wednesday. So moving on into Thursday. Second, take a sip of water here. So Thursday, moon moves into Scorpio. This is a lunar day, but it involves that Scorpio new moon. So it's going to be a bit hectic, a bit relentless even. Anyway, so moon's into Scorpio. New moon vibes are in effect. While the energy shifts into a more sensitive, vulnerable, vigilant, and power conscious mood. We're preparing for a new beginning as it relates to our Scorpio area of life. And this one is going to be, it's going to be extreme. It's going to be driven with momentum, cheered on by a well-dignified Mars. Remember, Mars is co-present in this soul situation. And Mars is also in the superior position to Saturn too. So Mars, even though Saturn's also well dignified, it's direct, it's very powerful. Mars is very powerful right now. And that has something that's flavoring this new moon vibes. So this is us sensing that power, sensing that there's a great deal of energy brewing and about to burst, creating a revolution, both in our personal, but also in our mundane lives. This is feeling that we want to get ready to go forward full steam. But there needs to be caution since the moon is not at its best dignity in Scorpio. And if we push too hard, we may just find ourselves hurting from the strike. So moon makes first that conjunction with Mars. We're feeling that force. We're getting caught up in the moment. The impulse to act is very strong. Our emotions feel ready to burst forward. There's this urge to use that energy to do something, to empower ourselves, to act with speed, strength, depth, and sharpness. But then, moon is then squaring with Saturn. So just before it perfects that Scorpio new moon too. So this is adding to the interesting integration of that conjunction with Mars too, because the moon is going to square with Saturn. So this is that first dose of what this lunation, the complication of what this lunation is about. There's a lot of like stop, go, stop vibes that's going to be going on for this lunation period, where we're going to have that empowerment to push forward, but things are going to be holding us back on some level, perhaps even our bodies, but we have to be careful not to get sick during this lunation. So this is going to be flavoring things. This is feeling that urge and impulse to act, to move, to propel things forward with sharpness, with strength, Mars types of significations, but then getting a block, getting stopped, hitting a red light, not going forward. This really reminds me so much of like whenever I drive in the city, and some of my friends have these really like super cars, like Ferrari, Lamborghini, whatever. And I don't ride in these often, but whenever we do, it's like, it's a lot of fun and there's a lot of like excitement, but it's also like, okay, the light goes green, then there's this moment to drive, and then it's like, and then the foot's on the gas, the engine roars. It's like you're inside of a velociraptor, and then suddenly you have to stop, You can't like go above the speed limit. There's rules in place. There's order to be maintained. There's laws on how fast we can drive. And then, of course, there's this danger to not obey the speed laws. And we can't just go full speed in a supercar and not expect repercussions. And that's kind of the frustration of this, is like, okay, we have this friggin' Lamborghini, but we can't even use it the way it's supposed to be used. And so it's like, why do we have it? That's the question I always have whenever I'm in these sports cars. I'm like, this is awesome, but like, it's not being used to its full potential. So like, what's the point? I don't know. Anyway, this is us getting that first dose of how we cannot just go full speed ahead without facing some sort of consequence. This is the law, the block, the red light that's making our Porsche or Lamborghini stop. Otherwise, we're going to have to face the law when we're square with Jupiter later on. Jupiter represents the law. Okay, and then the moon continues and perfects the new moon. So we get that Scorpio new moon. Boom, and it is exactly opposite Uranus. So that's what we're going to be talking about for the next little while. So this is interesting. It involves, first of all, the co-presence of Mars and Scorpio, the ruler of the new moon, as well as the new moon taking place exactly opposite Uranus. And the moon's going to perfect that opposition the same day, and then the sun perfects it the next morning. So this means that this next lunar cycle is heavily influenced by not just Mars, but Uranus. And this is signaling to us the lunar cycle is leading up to the next month, where we're going to be going into eclipse season alongside the second Saturn-Uranus square, as well as the Venus retrograde that stations exactly conjunct Pluto and Capricorn, which I'm going to go into more later on. But this is all related to Pluto squares that have happened before in the last month, where we've been going through this all since late September, So needless to say, December is going to be pretty radical, powerful month. But let's bring it back to November. Let's bring it back to this new moon. So like all new moons, this is a beginning and an ending, the beginning of new intentions related to our Scorpio area of life, and the end of the intentions we set during the Libra new moon and that part of life. So where we are and what we're trying to reset in terms of our identity, purpose, direction, and environment, it's related to the Scorpio area in our chart. So if you know your chart, where is Scorpio, that's what's being, there's a new beginning there. And remember, the moon is in depression or fall in Scorpio. So there's pitfalls that could happen in terms of our emotional well-being, of our bodies, of our circumstance, of our environment. So already there's some vigilance associated with this new moon, and it's likely that we'll want to set new intentions to creating space and caretaking that initial unsettling related to the moon, our emotions, bodies, environments, to find ways of using what we've learned in Libra about balance and harmony to make space for greater peace in that Scorpio part of life. So what is it that feels chaotic, intense, dangerous, or destabilizing? This is what needs to be purged, cleansed, eliminated in order for new life to grow in the future. That's what Scorpio is all about. Think about the death card, clearing the space, what no longer serves us so that new life can grow. I think about, whenever, like for instance, in a 12-step program where you quit alcohol, you stop using drugs, that initial stopping, it's kind of an intense death grieving moment, but through that, new things come. You realize there's so much more to life beyond the drugs, beyond the drinking. So otherwise, we have to consider this new moon is exactly opposite Uranus, the planet of rebellion, emancipation, breakthroughs, extremes. Uranus represents, along with Mars, the maverick and rebel that doesn't align with the status quo and with the norms of the world. So there's an inventiveness alongside a disruptiveness to Uranus, where sudden events or ideas occur that change things or produce reversals. So on the one side, we have this new beginning where we're looking to clear space for peace and life to grow in the future. While on the other side, we have this sudden and shocking breakthrough that is toning and influencing the entire lunar cycle ahead, which could actually produce some really inventive, radical, and liberating approaches to how we make our intentions this month, to how we clear space, purge, and eliminate in order to cope with those feelings of vigilance and fears about the future. So this is us seeing something different can help us to break down the structures of old, to do something differently, to practice the opposite, to bring change that is exciting and evolves us in ways that helps us to individuate, to grow, to release ourselves from unhealthy behaviors of the past that left us dependent on people, places, and things, right? So expect the unexpected, basically, with Uranus involved always. As we make new moves to make space and clear fields for new life. And once that full moon happens, there's also an eclipse at the time. So this is a really radical lunar cycle. And then just before the end of the day, the moon itself perfects that opposition to Uranus. And, I've kind of talked about it already, but now we this is reflecting and feeling what this new moon is attempting to break through with. This is that shock of an impulse, the feeling that this new moon really means something, that things are about to change. So let's go into Friday. First things first, the sun perfects the opposition to Uranus. It's just further emphasizing the new moon opposition. This is awareness in the light of things, the mundane light that sheds and propels the world forward. now is in perfect opposition to Uranus, the planet of revolutions and breakthroughs. So the story goes forward, but it's at an impasse. Can it continue on course without being totally broken away? There's a quickening taking place, and the course we're on is being tugged out of an attempt to purge and empower and into a space of change occurring in our rootedness, simplicities, and steadfast movement forward. So Taurus things. There's change in all these things, and now we have to deal with that tension between these two poles, right? And the ruler of Uranus, Venus, is just about to change into Capricorn, where there's a seriousness taking place, and I'm going to get into that in a moment. So then trines with Neptune, and I think I haven't really heard any astrologers talk about connections to Neptune during these transits, but I think it's important to pay attention to what's going on with Neptune, because Neptune is going to be the interesting dynamic for having some some senses of relief coming forward. And I think that all this is taking place in the coming weeks outside of contacts with Jupiter. Neptune is going to be this place of providing relief to the extremes. So this is like that contact with a moment of escape, with a fantasy that we feel bonded to, that we feel what we need in order to relieve ourselves of the extremes and change. Neptune, being in Pisces, has this essence of visions, dreams, hope, and faith. It's connected to Jupiter. Jupiter is the ruler of Pisces. So there's something about seeing the bigger picture of our future and having a vision related to that, escaping into that, and finding faith again in the bigger picture of things. Maybe not necessarily the seriousness of it, but more like indulging in the fantasy of it, so to speak. And that through connecting with that, diving into the sea of faith, we can find some redemption in the turmoil. We can reconcile and unify where things are changing and unsteady. All right. And then Venus moves into Cap. Boom. So it's a shift. It's a shift in the way things are bonding, playing, loving, mending, tempering, and harmonizing. We're getting more serious in our relationships. There's sense that commitment is necessary to establish a basis for creating harmony and balance. We're able to let go of some of the emotive ties in relationship a bit, to just know that things are trustworthy and working, and to put our aesthetic values, beauty and understanding and enjoyment of what we're doing into work, resource building, persisting through aesthetic complexities, and putting a bonding quality to our determination, to going higher, to climbing stronger, to establishing discipline and maturation through and with relationship. This is seeing how commitment and tradition work so well for us to have stability and grounding in relationship, so that we do not need to worry about whether or not that is working, right? So all these things in Libra that we needed to figure out. Now we figure those out. We know that this is things that we need to just work so that we can do other work. And this is about getting our emotions out of the way, to use our understanding of beauty and balance to bond together that which has been troubling or deep, especially because Pluto's in Capricorn and there's going to be the Venus retrograde there. So on a basic level, Venus in Capricorn is like getting pleasure from business, from work, from putting our heads down, doing what needs to doing in order to go forward. It's that one step at a time vibes, and somehow we get pleasure from that. It's not boring, it's invigorating, and we appreciate trusting the process. So it's interesting. Even if it's a slow one, it's about working the system, because you're going to enjoy that system a lot, even if it eventually needs to be reworked a little later on. So otherwise, we have to remember that this is where Venus is going to be retrograding this December. Venus is first going to move through. It's not technically in shadow yet, but once it reaches that 24th degree, Venus is going to be retrograding. So it means that now that Venus is in Capricorn, that sense of whatever needs to be gone back over, reintegrated, retempered, mended, brought back into balance is coming into the Capricorn area of life. So know where your chart is. Where's Capricorn? This is where we're going to be beginning to feel that whatever has been occurring in Capricorn, and because of Pluto, needs to be reworked in some way. needs to be gone back over. And in order for balance and harmony to be maintained, may need to be rebalanced. Something is unfair there in this part of life, or at least there is a lack of peace there. And whenever Venus goes retrograde, there's this sense of whatever has been kept harmonious in that part of life is needed to be rebound, remended, and we need to take an inventory there in order to put out on the table what's been festering, what's been rotting, what needs to be released. So it's Venus retrogrades are super interesting because every 8 years, Venus is going to go back to the same sign where it retrograded before. So you can think back 8 years prior, what was going on there in terms of balance, harmony, love, relationship, diplomacy, and justice. Where were things needing to be mended at that time? And what things needed to be unraveled in order for them to be brought back together in a more harmonious fashion? Sometimes these are things we're not even doing. And I think when planets go retrograde, there's something about fate coming into it too. It's like, so the planets are going typically opposite to the prime directions, which is like the planet is moving itself and we get that 24-hour day, and that's called a primary motion. And the planets are going opposite to that. But when they retrograde, they go with the primary motion. There's something about like things now going into a fated fashion with retrogradation on some level. And so with that in mind, maybe it's not things we need to do, but expect these sorts of threads to be re-examined again. Perhaps this is part of like that tapestry of life. Like I know for anyone who's read The Wheel of Time and they talk about the tapestry or they talk about the wheel weaving, and the Wheel of Time show is going to be coming out on Amazon soon. So I'm super excited for that. But basically, like, think about it that way. There's weaving being done. Think of a tapestry. It's a beautiful piece of art. Venus is the planet of beauty and art and aesthetic. And so, when Venus goes retrograde, it needs to remend something in the tapestry, right? It needs to remend it. So have there been strings that no longer are working that need to be gone back over and brought back into beauty, balance, and radiance? Venus is a benefic planet. Typically, it wants to help things, bond things, bring things together through love, value, and harmony. But when Venus retrogrades, it's going to unstring things or even replace the strings. So I like to use the analogy of like an instrument, a stringed instrument. Sometimes in a stringed instrument, you need to replace the strings for the instrument to play properly again, for you to have a good sound quality. And now that Venus is in Capricorn, it's like we're becoming more conscious of what strings need replacing. And perhaps in this Capricorn part of life where we just want things to work, to be disciplined, to have efficiency, it may mean that we need to restring the whole instrument, right? So even though Venus is not technically in shadow yet, being in Capricorn, we're already feeling that things need rebalancing. And Venus is going to be in Capricorn for the next 5 months. So it's time to get ready for how things are going from this point forward, because it's going to be a long haul in Capricorn, which, for all those of us that have strong cardinal sign placements, there's Capricorn placements, we've felt a lot of that from 2019 to 2020. So, kind of expect some of that returning on some level, but with Venus being there, it is going to be more about making things more harmonious, making things more balanced. So it's not really like as detrimental as when Saturn was there and every time Mars squared it or opposed it or conjoined it. It's going to be more like this is a remending process that needs to be done. And it's going to make things stronger and have a more quality bonding to it for a longer period, for that 8-year period before Venus has to retrograde there again. So it's about making things work for the long haul. Okay, so that's Venus in Capricorn. Anyway, so the moon squares with Jupiter, and moon's still in the sensitive place. Moon is in Scorpio. It's a bit overwhelmed from the new moon opposition to Uranus. There's this defiance and distrust to stop, go vibes moving forward. And then it squares to Jupiter. It's like coming up to that judicator. Did we follow the laws? Did we tell the truth? Did we not just act defiantly and push forward without consideration? Scorpio is kind of a secretive sign. If we're keeping the secrets, Jupiter doesn't like that. Jupiter is a planet about the truth. So Jupiter is there to remind us of the course we're on, giving us a bigger picture. that things we're doing are happening not just internally in the world, but out in the world too. So there's this unifying process, and we may not necessarily like it, right? It's like, okay, bigger picture, la la la, get it, I get it, I get it, over and over again. But that's just what Jupiter's doing, right? So Jupiter's trying to create that unified cohesion to things. And just because Jupiter is a benefic planet doesn't mean we have to like it all the time, right? And then Moon makes that sextile to Pluto, making an adjustment to whatever occurred during the Pluto squares just a couple days prior. If we need to do something, reharmonize things, perhaps we can. Perhaps we can be vulnerable and allow things to transform rather than control them entirely. It's not going to be necessarily easy, but if we can temper our attitudes, we can help ourselves with how how this oncoming Venus retrograde conjunct Pluto is going to play out. So we'll be doing ourselves a favor if we can get ourselves out of our own way at this time. It's time to find solutions. And then Mercury moves into Scorpio just at the end of Friday. So I'll wrap this up with Friday's report. But basically, so Mercury catches up with Sun and Mars, ingress is Scorpio, producing another pile up of planets. Now we have Moon, Sun, Mars, and Mercury in Scorpio just before Moon leaves there, but Moon's still in there. But now they're all in a Mars ruled sign. They're not in a Venus ruled sign. So things are really Martian now. Mercury has done all it needs to do in Libra. It's thought through the problems. It's kept the balance in exchanges. And now it's taking its thinking, its skill sets, its curiosity, and bringing them into Scorpio. Mars is reclusive and house on haunted hill sign. Think of the house on haunted hill. That's friggin' Scorpio. So Mercury is now going to begin producing exchanges, questions, expertise in those Martian, Gothic, ghost and ghoul types of qualities. We're going to be communicating and making exchanges in more deep, raw ways. Perhaps we're contemplating and thinking about places of vulnerability, skepticism, and uncertainty about the future. There's going to be more communication about what helps us to feel secure, empowered, and how we can purge and cleanse our thinking from what's been scaring us or keeping us from connecting to others because we've been afraid of what they'll think necessarily. We can be more vulnerable in our communications too, because that's how we're going to purge destructive thoughts and resentments that are preventing us from finding stability and feeling less insecure in our exchanges and in our sense of changes occurring. So words and exchanges are getting sharper. And then once Mercury conjoins with Mars by next week, we're going to be again having that mental and dexterous precision and cutting ability, which are now very powerful, very capable of breaking down boundaries because Mars is in its domicile Scorpio, of disarming things. But we have to be careful because there's a danger, because if we can destroy things too far, and with all this Martian scorpionic energy, there's a potential to pull out the wrecking ball and break down the building to the very core. And so we have to decide, what building do we want to break down? And just be careful not to break down the whole neighborhood, because perhaps this is what we want to do. We want to, break things down, clear some space, but just be careful not to do it to everything. So perhaps it's not what we, necessarily want for others to, we need to try and recall what we've been learning through Libra season is what I'm trying to get at. Where are your energies going to be most effective? Be discerning. Because you're not going to have the energy to do everything. Now is a time to learn more about where a precise cut is necessary for what is needed to be cleansed out more than others. So, what part of the garden really needs that rehaul, that needs that like tearing up. And that's what I think we have to become more conscious of. Anyway, so let's move into Saturday. First things first, Moon moves into Sag. So we get that shifting in the energy, shifting in the mood and the feeling. And even though there's been this shift of planets into a more serious, deep and harsher signs, the Moon moves into Jupiter's fire sign of adventure, optimism, hope, and having fun doing things without too much care. There's a bit of nihilism, especially in the first 50% of Sag, because it's the centaur. So part of it's a beast, part of it's a human. And so that beast part of it's like nihilistic, hedonistic, just wants to friggin' do things, have an adventure, have fun for the sake of it, find, be a bit more carefree, a bit more reckless. So there's this contrast happening because where we're emotionally is not matching up so well with where there's all this seriousness and sense of impermanence that everything else is moving into. The moon is now feeling that bigger picture, but maybe it's also kind of sick of trying to make sense of the bigger picture. Maybe there's this feeling that the bigger picture is a bit of a pain in the ass, right? So yeah, and then the moon also right away conjoins with the south node. So there's this decrease, there's this lessening, there's this detachment and escapism, a disillusion of things. This is very like fuck it vibes, because we just don't want to feel like this bigger picture bullshit is not enough for us right now. Maybe just having hope is not enough, and maybe we just need to do something for fun because it's time to have a good time regardless of everything else. We can't just be serious and deep and harsh all the time. We got to like let loose and have a bit of fun, be a bit more released. And I think that when the moon moves into Sag, you're really going to be feeling that, especially when it conjoins the south node. It's just like, yo, like give me a friggin' break, right? So take a break, give yourself a break, right? Because I think there's going to be that space for it, because the moon's going to sextile with Saturn. And so maybe we can feel good about giving ourselves a break, feeling like actually it's going to be a good day. So go outside, get off your own case, get off the case of others, turn off a bit, do something for yourself. Saturn is also direct now. The world is going regardless of if we're involved in it or not. So maybe it's time to just give ourselves a break, because we can today. We don't have to be on it 24/7. We also need to take care of our emotional well-being. And this is Saturn reminding us that we can just do things to adjust, to connect to the bigger picture. We don't necessarily need to connect. Like, we don't have to be like, oh, this is all about the bigger picture to still connect to the bigger picture. And I think Saturn's just saying, okay, do what you need to do to come back, right? So maybe it's okay to not do anything related to the bigger picture right now. All right. Next thing is Mercury makes the sextile to Venus. All right. So I feel pretty good about this. We're communicating in maybe a beautiful manner, politeness that makes an exchange feel good, adjustments to where we're being more serious and deep, feels a bit, maybe it feels a bit counterintuitive, but somehow it works. Somehow it's making an exchange that feels good, even though it's like kind of serious and deep. So Venus is in Capricorn. The pleasure is in putting our heads down, doing the work. Mercury's in Scorpio. Our thinking is concerned with power, depth, and security. And when they come together in this harmonious exchange, it means that we're able to be more serious and we're able to think deeply, but we can also do that in a way that brings harmony back into our minds and into our sense of beauty in the world. Perhaps this is having a deep and serious debate and exchange of questions and concerns related to our emotional well-being, as well as our determination on our values and get to the next level in our work or whatever we take seriously, right? Mercury has insight into the depths of things, and Venus is having fun, being serious. So this is us making some sort of exchange in a serious way that somehow is fun and playful, even though it's serious. So I know it's kind of counterintuitive, but that's like what the vibes are saying right now. So, see how it goes. But perhaps it's just about becoming really certain that the commitments we're making, the plans we're establishing, and the traditions we're investing in are worth it. And this is us connecting to that and figuring out what we need to think about in order to become more comfortable and getting enjoyment out of those commitments. So in a way, it's like becoming more certain of and comfortable about the results we are desiring, right? And that is it for Saturday. So I'm just going to move into Sunday. Moon continues through Sag. I mean, there's not really much to say about today. Basically, all that happens is the moon connects with Neptune and it squares with Neptune, and then it makes that connection to Jupiter. And I really what I think, I'm going to break this down a bit more, but really what I think this is saying is just like, okay, we had our chance to, get at get out of this bigger picture bullshit for a bit, but now we're kind of coming back into it. And we're seeing like the silver lining in and that square to Neptune is just like, okay, we can't just like be in the fantasy all the time. So perhaps, it's not a day to be lost in daydreams, and that's okay. It's not every day we can escape and live in a fantasy world. This is not one of those days. This is recalling where we're at in terms of putting our heads down, the bigger picture, and our emotional needs and how that's related, and seeing that we had a day to let go, and now we have to come back to preparing for the next steps. And then that sextile connecting with the ruler of Sag, this is really just connecting again with the bigger picture, getting the better perspective. We had a chance to be reckless and nihilistic when the moon entered Sag, but now that the moon is in the later degrees of Sag, where it's said that the head of the beast is located, or the more rational part of the centaur is located, wisdom and rationality return. So we connect to where Jupiter is at. We get that redemption we're looking for. We see that things are about to move forward and there's work to be done. So what can we do to be more positive about the stuff? This is seeing that silver lining. So that's it for Sunday. So let's just move into Monday. And first things first, moon moves into Cap. So moon moves into Capricorn. There's an energy shift, a mood shift, seriousness and discipline take over. The time to be reckless and wishy-washy is over. It's time to put our heads down, get our emotions out of the way, and just do the work. We connect to Jupiter. We connected to Jupiter. We got a dose of the bigger picture, seeing how things are working with each other, and now we're ready to get down to work and to start knocking things off the list, one thing at a time, down the ladder, up the ladder, getting to the end of the day, and then following the plan. And basically Moon then conjoins with Venus. And this is what I think is a good thing, because it's like we get that dose of pleasure from doing the work, but from being serious, from following a plan, using a strategy to get things done. It feels good to be productive. It feels good to be engaged in our work. It feels good to have a plan and a strategy to getting ahead of the day, so to speak, and to having our plans in order. This is us feeling that enjoyment fully and loving how getting work done feels to our sense of accomplishment and wonder. It makes the simple things in life feel wonderful on some level. Just doing the work, and it feels good. And then Moon follows that conjunction and then sextiles Mercury and Mars kind of sequentially. So let's just highlight that stuff. So yeah, really just emphasizing this Capricorn vibe. We have a strategy, we have a plan, we're doing the work. This is understanding that, thinking about that, figuring it out, being precise, all those Mercury, Mars types of things. We have a drive, putting the foot on the gas, going forward, working, not letting things get in our way and just doing what needs to be done. And we're going to have that chance to do that for a little bit. But of course, you can see already that there's a square to Saturn that's building up, like it's already kind of engaged since Mars entered the 4th degree of Scorpio. So they're getting ready to conjoin and make a square to Saturn. But for now, we have that drive to push forward. There's kind of some clear space to move forward and do those things. And then just before the end of this forecast, Moon keeps going through Cap, and then it trines with Uranus. And that's just at the end of the forecast. So it's connecting again with that sudden impulse from the new moon. So we're connecting again with the new moon. The moon is about to make a sextile to the sun too. So we're at that waxing phase. And, we're pushing forward, we're emerging with things, but there's that impulse, there's that feeling, that urge to push, to catalyze, to work, to innovate, to create a breakthrough, to see that the plan needs working and things are quickening. There's this like only limited amount of time, and it can be very impulsive. And we have to be conscious of that because look, the square to Saturn is increasing from Mars. So we have to be conscious of that. So there's only a limited amount of time in the day to get things done. If we push too far beyond that, we can burn ourselves out. And what I'm going to be talking about in the next report is the danger of burning out. So just be conscious of that. They may feel like, let's stay up all night working, but you can't do that forever. So this is getting support from that sudden breakthrough from events. We'll have that chance to push forward, and there's some sort of revolution occurring. So guys, that is it for the report this week. Next week, we got the Mercury conjunction with Mars for the third time, this time in Scorpio. Then they both square with Saturn at the same time as the first quarter moon. Then the sun's going to trine to Neptune. We get that Mercury opposition to Uranus. Sun squares Jupiter at the end of the week. So next week is more of what we've been feeling this week, but it just starts to kind of come into that stop-go precision thing. There's going to be a challenge to overcome, but can we overcome it in the way that we are impulsively feeling we need to? Anyway, that's this week. I hope you guys got a lot out of it. Thanks always for liking, commenting, subscribing. Please share this video if you think it's going to help someone. If you want to book a consultation with me, head over to my website. Links are in the description box. You can go over to the my services page, book in through my scheduling system. Again, if you want to take advantage of my reduced rates for the holiday season, book a basic reading and just leave in your form that you want to claim that discount. And I'll give you a 1.5 hour consultation for the price of a basic. So you save about €50 and you get 30 minutes extra. All right, that's it for me this week. I hope everyone has a really awesome new moon. I wish you guys all the best. It's great to be back, and I'll see you guys next week and through blog posts and whatever. So take care and see you later. Bye.